it's not like a literal story about two people who are each other's soulmates and they're gonna just like save each other and and pick each other out of the muck and get out of like oppressive society and and everything will be okay because of that.
What if I really was someone else? Very far away on the other side of a television screen.
Hi, Jane. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I'm really excited to speak with you about your film. I saw the TV Glow. I feel like a lot of people saw this and we're just kind of like finally, like finally there's something on a big screen that speaks to a kind of interiority that maybe hasn't been reflected quite this vividly before. So I'm really excited to speak about it with you.
Well, thank you, first of all, for all of those very sweet things. One of the things that I think is almost like hidden by the thematic and sort of like plot of line of the movie is the fact that like I feel that my filmmaking is like quite sensuous, and I mean that in terms of like sense, it's sensory. And it's been funny because like obviously this is a movie about people who are kind of like divorced from their bodies and from textile existing in physicality. But I do think slash wonder that like I think because I was that kid pretty divorced from those things in the real world, I became like extra sensitive to them, in like kind of like the superhero daredevil kind of way. Like I didn't have like touch in the real world, and so I looked for touch in movies and became very sensitive to just like certain yeah, like textures, and the idea of like putting on a movie to have some kind of sensual experience, to enter different spaces that like exist on this very physical plane. I think is something that I just like learned by existing as like Owen and Maddy exist, in a lot of the film, just like craving that through a screen.
Two lead characters have a pretty non-linear relationship, and you're kind of the movie I feel plays against a lot of high school coming of age tropes and stories. As a director, what strategies did you bring to depict that relationship when you were working with Justice and Brigette? Because I feel like it's very indirect in its way.
Again, it's trying to reflect on something that just feels like secondhand to me, and was certainly recontextualized post coming out and beginning to transition, just like thinking back on crushes I had or friendships that I had that were like romantic in some way. It was it was so much predicated on this like intangible, unspoken recognition of otherness or queerness, or like a shared gaze, whether that be through like fashion or taste in music or hairstyle, like they're like just these invisible signals that like made me made my antennas perk up when there was somebody else who seemed to like share a vision of themselves as in response to the world and certainly like the suburbs where I was growing up, like that became something I was looking for, and just being drawn to, attracted to, without really understanding that like actually what was going on there was some kind of like queer, yeah, like radar, right? Like we're I do think queer people, and especially queer people who like aren't living in Brooklyn in a sea of other queer people where they're sharing that community, it becomes like the movie says, almost like a psychic plane, where you can pick up these signals and understand before you even meet somebody, or when you see them across the dining hall or whatever, as the characters say, that like this person is like you in some way. And I think that it was important to me that like that be Owen and Maddie's connection, and that the movie not be sort of about them as each other's explicit savior. Like I think the movie is in conversation around that question because obviously Maddy like comes back to quote unquote save Owen. But I think the movie's sort of gaze on this is much more interested in like it's not like a literal story about two people who are each other's soulmates and they're gonna just like save each other and you know and pick each other out of the muck and get out of like oppressive society and you know and everything will be okay because of that. It's much more about like this pre queer awakening uh state of repression and like the psychic signals that can flicker through, whether that be from like the girl in the Bright Eyes t-shirt or the TV show that like feels weird that you both love.
So few movies that I've seen that recognize queerness and transness as being mediated through the social at all, right? Like I feel like there's this trope or this harmful structure where transness is something that's like so solipsistic and individuated, and it's something that you just like carry in yourself and then project out into the world and like deform the normal world around you. And one shot that I think really cuts against that in this movie is the shot where Owen tries on one of Maddie's dresses for the first time and then like comes out and you have the mirror, right? But it's out of focus. And so you're kind of like cutting against the dreaded trans mirror shot and looking at Maddie's face and how Maddie is perceiving Owen. Tell me about how that shot specifically came to be. Was that something that you knew you always kind of wanted to arrange in that way?
I didn't want a reveal of like Owen in the dress as this sort of like almost like pornographic like reveal shot, you know? Like we never see like a wider shot of him full body in there until they get onto the football field, I suppose. I knew that like it was about tender sort of like stepping into something, you know, which when I was writing this film, I was just doing for the first time. Like I remember going outside in a dress for the first time and being like, holy shit, this is scary as hell. And hopefully the way that I like frame Owen in that scene is reflective of that kind of vulnerability, which I think is like very beautiful in its way. But I also remember knowing I knew that that scene was about like smiling to me, and it was about like a look from Maddy to Owen and then from Owen back to Maddy, and that those looks needed to be like conjured in the moment. What a like deep cut reference that you wouldn't necessarily pick up in the film, but I remember watching Almost Famous, which is one of my favorite comfort movies, and such an egg movie. I mean, like like Penny Lane and whatever Cameron Crowe's you know stand-in character his name is in that movie, like their relationship is similar I think in a lot of ways to the Owen Maddy relationship. You know, Penny Lane is Kate Hudson is this like very embodied, confident, but also with like a lot of damage that she's is or isn't working through, you know, like older cool kid and then the like shy kid who's taken under her wing. I remember watching that movie and just being like so enamored with the way that like Cameron Crowe would hold on Kate Hudson in these moments, like where the camera would just like linger for an extra like 15 seconds and it's almost like he had already like fake called cut and Kate Hudson would just like smile or look at the ground or reveal something new and unexpected in a way that like kind of like gives me that feeling that I get when cinema is really working, which is just kind of like, you know, like shock and like shock at seeing something so human and so like wisp of smoky captured. And that was like what I was trying to do in that moment.
Kind of engaging with a lot of movies that were popular when I was growing up, that kind of like deal with the TV as a portal um, into another world. And I'm thinking like I was like growing up. I think we're like close to the same age when The Ring was really popular, when that was kind of like popping off, and that was a very like direct horror movie about the image and the television becoming real, right? TV Glow seems to flip that. flow a little bit, where there's a very intense scene of Owen with his head in the television, and it's sparking and horrifying and visceral.
I think a lot of it also just comes from diffuse identity, probably like caused by a feeling of dissociation as a young person, but also just like an absolute fascination with like what I was talking about earlier, just like the sensual experience of like disappearing into a screen, like the oniric quality of going into a movie theater and all the lights going down and like all of a sudden you're still you in your seat, but you're also kind of not. I've just like that's been such a part of my DNA. And I think there was a lot of like coping that was happening through that practice, but it also just like from the youngest age invaded my dreams. I don't think I'm alone in this, but I have like less now, but I had so many recurring dreams where like I would be watching a television show and then I'd be the character in the television show. And like, but like a dream often is, it wasn't like shot reverse shot. It was very fluid, almost to the point where like I couldn't quite track the moment when my identity had shifted and or when I had left one world and entered another world and when I had been watching versus being. And I think I'm just like working this out in the work because cinema allows you to interrogate that kind of diffusion in a really beautiful and varied way, and also is inherent in the medium itself, I don't know, it's been a great way to talk about transition, talk about identity, talk about like human experience, just like how surreal it is, which is the stuff that keeps me keeps me going.
Thank you so much for speaking with me. Congratulations again on the film. Thank you. Congratulations on being our 2024 Filmmaker
Yeah,
of the Year.
filmmaker of the year. Damn.
It's been great chatting with you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Sasha. Good to meet you.